Welcome to Sum It Up for April 28th, 2011. Sum It Up, Sermon Updates Midweek. My opportunity to talk just a little bit about the message from this past Sunday and to focus on particular issues or look at the sermon in a little bit different light. We're in the sermon series, Clinging to Hope in the Storm, where we're looking at the two stories of where Jesus and his disciples were out on the lake when a storm hit. And one of the storms, the disciples had gone out before Jesus and he met them on the water. They thought he was a ghost. They were really worried and concerned because of the wind and the waves, and then they were scared because they saw a ghost. In the other story, which was actually the first story in the Gospels about the boat in the storm, is the one where Jesus was sleeping on a cushion in the boat with them while the winds and the waves were coming over the sides of the boat. And they wonder if Jesus really even cares if they drown. In both of these stories, Jesus talks to them about their faith, about their lack of faith. The message this week is don't wait to call on Jesus. What's interesting to me about the story from Mark, the 4th chapter, is that Jesus is only consulted when they're worried about drowning. I mean, think about how that plays out just for a second. They had been fighting the winds and the waves for quite a while. Jesus has been sleeping on his cushion. And they finally go to Jesus saying, don't you care if we drown? They don't come to him at the beginning when it looks bad or it looks intense, but they wait until there's a real possibility that they might drown. I have to be honest, this sounds like my spiritual life in a lot of ways. I can't tell you the number of times in my life to where I've fussed, fumed, worried, tried, worked real hard, failed, long before I even contemplated calling on Jesus. See, this story is interesting because once they speak to Jesus, it's almost immediately that he tells the storm and the winds to be quiet, to be still. And almost immediately they are. And boy, I have to tell you that there are moments and times in my life to where that's the story of my life. I've worried, I've tried, I've done all that I could to try to fix things, and then I finally succumb. I finally, in humility, cry out to God, and then things are fixed almost immediately. I don't know what storm you're going through today. I don't know what challenge you're facing, but I do know this, that you need to call out to Jesus now. Why is it that we make it something we do later? Why do we wait? Is it just a question of pride? Is it just a question of humility? Is it just a question of faith? Do we not ask until we have no other options? Is it not that we trust God a lot, but that when we finally run out of other real possibilities, we, at the end of the day, in the last moment, in the 12th hour, in the 11th hour, I guess, that should be, we go to God. I don't know what it is about us people. Why is it so hard for us to trust God? I was trying to think of different instances where this played out in my life, and wanted to come up with one in which I could say, hey, here you go. Here's exactly how Todd has done this in his life. And as I've searched my memory banks, I'm realizing that the number of times to where I have waited to call on Jesus are almost too many for me to mention. How do we change that? How do we start calling on Jesus rather than waiting to call on Jesus? How do we encourage one another to do the same thing? Maybe that's the problem. Maybe if it's just left up to us, we don't know what we're going to do. And maybe we need to find someone else to be accountable to. Maybe we need to have somebody else in our corner that can remind us that Hey, Todd, don't wait to call on Jesus. Call on Jesus now. I mean, when I look back on my life, I can't tell you the number of times Jesus has failed me because I don't know when he has. Don't get me wrong, there have been moments and times where I felt like God has been far away, like he is sleeping on that cushion, or he is taking a nap, or he's just not interested in my life right now. But I have to be honest that when I look back in my life, it is painfully obvious, to use the word again, that God's there. God's been there. Even in those moments where I didn't think he was there. Just like for the disciples. When they asked Jesus, don't you even care if we drown? Well, he cared enough that he made the winds and the waves stop. And I guess he could have done that long before then. But maybe that was part of the point of this story, was that they needed to learn to trust Jesus earlier. Maybe that's what we need to learn. Sum it up. Hey, have faith, trust in God, call out to Jesus. Have a great week.